Hello, I'm Chris Athanas. I'm a KMP developer. And today we're going to be continuing the series, How to Program from the Ground Up. This one's going to be about software methodologies. Oh, yeah, an update. So the company that created that portal got acquired. So I had to resubmit a ticket. So I resubmitted the ticket, and they said they're coming out on Tuesday. So hopefully this thing will be closed up by then with this new company. We'll see. We'll see. All right, let's get into it. So this is going to be a little controversial episode. This is just from my experience from being in the industry and having all kinds of different methodologies being thrown at me from different companies. Because I've been mostly going to startups and medium-sized companies and some big companies too, but they all have issues around this. So the big idea is, are there ways to organize the work of software development, of discovering solutions and designing software that are better than others? Waterfall. Okay, so this was never a thing. Waterfall was never a thing. Let's listen to about it here for a second. This is such a crazy story. Okay, this guy Winston Royce, he created the term waterfall, and on the page 2, he talks about how he was not advocating for a waterfall process, but trying to make a point about how software development is managed, is being managed like back in the '60s, or the whole time up until this paper in the 1970s, was being managed like a manufacturing process, and it was totally screwing things up. The only things that were actually getting through were the people that would skirt this process somehow. And let's listen to a little bit about this. It's going to be controversial.
One of the mantras that I often repeat here is that all ideas are not equal. There are bad ideas and good ideas in software development and everywhere else. But in software development,
I'm just going to say out from the outset, all like the best insights about how the hell to make software and not lose your mind comes from old guys. I'm just saying. The young whippersnappers, they haven't seen the battle of like bad ideas and death marches and just trying to put more and more men on the team, which makes it last longer. The Mythical Man Month. That's another book people should know. But you just can't add people to a team and make it go faster. It doesn't work. Now, manufacturing process, yes, absolutely. Specialize, segregate, yeah, completely split everything up into tiny little pieces and optimize the shit out of those pieces. But that's manufacturing. That's when you already know what you want to make. Manufacturing and software is free. We don't have that problem. We can produce it exactly like we wrote it. So the problem is now, what are we making? How are we writing it? How are we creating this monstrosity?
we should be able to distinguish between them. I talked about Carl Sagan's baloney detector in a recent video as one way to identify the bad ideas. One of the ideas that I often use as an example of what I think is a terrible idea when it comes to software development is that of the waterfall model. Adopting this as an approach is a terrible mistake, yet it's still at the heart of nearly everyone's approach, even if they don't recognize it as such. So what is waterfall development really? Why is it quite so bad? And how on earth does it manage to still be seemingly the default approach despite being demonstrably so?
Amazingly enough, even in places that say they have an agile process that I've worked at that are saying we don't do waterfall, are doing waterfall. Almost every place I've worked, except for companies I've actually built myself because we couldn't afford to do this process this way. It's been waterfall. Well, there's a couple of places I worked that we did it agile. We didn't call it that. We just called it getting it done, and not trying to go out of business. That was our thing.
Ineffective channel. And if you haven't been here before, please do hit subscribe. And if you enjoy the content here today, hit like as well. Let me begin by making my position very clear if it's not already. I think that there are no circumstances, zero, where waterfall is the best option for development. It isn't what works best for regulated systems. It doesn't make safety critical systems safer. And it isn't what we need to be able to do to organise large-scale development. It's not what organisations who are best at any of these things in software do.
And he would know because he's involved with all these projects and like turning them around after they've been floundering around for years and not going anywhere.
And of course, it's bureaucratic overkill for anything else. It's a terrible idea that will always result in a worse outcome. That doesn't mean that you can't build software, but your chances are lower that you're going to succeed.
Right. You'll eventually build something. You're probably not going to like it. Probably going to suck. Probably going to not make it. It'll be, even if you do it on time, it's probably going to be terrible. Because that's not the purpose of Agile, by the way. It's not to produce software on time. It's to produce the right thing at some point. How much do you want to spend? How long do you want to go?
But despite all of that, it's still what most people in some form seem to choose to do. And fundamentally, I put that down to the lure of the plan and the illusion of rigor. It feels as though we're working harder when we're working that hard.
Correct. And every other aspect of business, that is true, except for this weird little knowledge work area where we're actually trying to come up with something new or refine something and try and take someone else's lunch. That's a lot of what we're doing. So, you have to build it in a way that's going to make it better and get it out the door to beat them before they do something. It's a time thing.
First, though, what do we really mean by waterfall in the context of software? I think that most people watching this will have seen, in some form, this diagram. It's probably one of the most used diagrams associated with software development. But the weird thing is that it's a mistake. The idea of decomposing software into a series of distinct phases was originally proposed in the 1950s. But the commonest description that most people reference is this, the paper written by Winston Royce published in 1970, which is where this diagram comes from. This is a 10-page document, and this famous diagram appears on page 2. So one exploration for the popularity of this terrible idea is that people in the 1970s were too lazy to read the whole document.
No, what happened was the managers that got a hold of this document, who were in charge of all this stuff, said, "Oh, I know how to do this. I learned this in school. This is what they taught us how to do it when we're doing manufacturing. So this is just going to be like a manufacturing, right? Awesome! I can manage the shit out of that." And when they tried to apply it, guess what happened? Everything grinds to a halt.
Because if they had, they would have learned what Dr. Royce really thought, which was that this approach is risky and invites failure. Royce's document was written around this diagram as a straw man, which he then proceeds to dismantle. As the document progresses, Royce identifies many of the holes in the waterfall approach. What Royce is actually proposing is certainly no lean or agile near.
Oh, yeah. What he was suggesting, though, as an alternative, this looks like that safe stuff, which I'll get into a little bit of. Yeah, no, this is wrong, Royce. So this is where he took it off the wrong. Oh, the other one was way easier than this crazy. What is this? All he did was say, basically, because all the crazy, he had to make it complicated, right? Of course. He had to make it academic. All he really needed to introduce is this little backwards cycle here. This is it. It's still going to do a waterfall process, but we're going to go back. We can go backwards. And then we go down again. And then we go back. And then we go down again. And then we go back. And then we go down again until we don't have to go down anymore. And then that one's done. And you go on to the next thing. This is the process, and you're changing it every time. We don't really know ahead of time what everything's going to do, but we can guess. And let's go with what we know right now. Let's go with what we know right now. Get it out in the field. Get some feedback on it. Instead of waiting a year, we're waiting 6 months, 3 months, 2 months, a month, 2 months. Not 6 months. Depends on the size of the system, right? Order of magnitude. If the system is 100, we do the 2%, the 5%, and not the dumb stuff. Like actually get something kind of useful working at first UI screen, login screens. Get something operational. Is this what you mean? Is this what you're talking about? And then they work with it along the way and throw it away. Throw away the first one. You probably didn't know what you're doing. Build another one. You still got time. You got that year because you're pumping stuff out. Now it's like, okay, at the end of the year, it's like, okay, we're 80% done. We're like on target. Do we want to keep going? It's like, okay, maybe not. Do we need to change direction again? We can. It's just how long do you want to take this thing? How long do you want to pay for it? That's kind of how it is anyway. Even if we planned it all out in advance and did everything, all the planning, everything, if it's even possible to do that, and then we built it in the last 3 months, you still don't have a time limit. It's like a twist of the managers don't get to control anymore. You're actually giving a lot of leeway into your knowledge workers to you trust them to do what they're going to be doing the right thing. You hired them, right? You should hire people that are going to be looking to do the right thing, right? The more of this control kind of stuff process you put on top of it, the less handy it is.
Nirvana either, though. It's pretty bureaucratic in itself. But there are, interestingly, several strong recommendations that, to modern ears at least, sound remarkably close to what we think of as an agile approach to development, including heavy reliance on integrated testing as part of the development approach. If you'd like to learn more about development,
do the job twice. Yeah, you might have to throw stuff away. It's software. The whole process is we don't know exactly how we're gonna do it. We're gonna try our best, right? We're gonna build something up. We're gonna see, hey, is this kind of the approach? Oh, you forgot about this. You forgot about this. What about that over there? Oh yeah, okay. Well, this isn't gonna work. Scrap it. Start over, and then it'll go way faster because the first one you learned all kinds of stuff that you didn't know, and then the second one gets even faster. and that's a totally legit approach, and it's rare that people do it. I've done it at many of my companies. The companies that I've worked, it's like, hey, just that's a bad approach. Drop it. We learned a bunch. Move on to the next thing, and we're shipping stuff the whole time. By the way, and involve the customer. Like, we're getting feedback. Is this what you mean? Is this what you're talking about? Especially these day and age. Like, when I first was coming up, it was really hard to get feedback because the release cycles, we had to like test it and build it and test it, and then the release it on floppy disks, right? So the only time where we get back is like letters in the mail, and we would be like surprised. Oh, we got an email about it. Oh my god! So a lot of times it was just like our friends and people in the industry, and like people like they would give us feedback about what it is, or your sales numbers. And a lot of it was through magazines, like people writing articles about your stuff. That was the feedback, and that's how you got it back. And so those cycles are slow, so people got used to that slow cadence. And then when the internet came on, I was like, hey guys, we can do these forums, right, on AOL and stuff like that. We can like give direct feedback that way. And they're like, we can do what? I was like, yeah, we can do it that way. And that's why I realized, I can kind of just do my own company now, because you don't have to do a lot of this other baloney. You could just like talk to people online. It's like in the 90s when I was doing this with shareware. It's like you can just talk to people and they'll tell you what you want. And if you're listening and you cycle, all of a sudden, oh wow, they start to buy more of your stuff because you're giving them what they want. Oh wow, that's kind of strange how that works, huh?
Including heavy reliance on integrated testing as part of the development approach. If you'd like to learn more...
Right, so that's, testing is part of this whole, another approach that makes it easy to change stuff, to refactor and change things, because you have a set of, an automated set that's going to exercise these behaviors, not the actual implementation, just the behaviors, which we can get into, I guess, maybe at some point in the program. I'm not sure this is appropriate for this beginner level, but just be aware that there's ways to automate this stuff. So that was about the Waterfall. Now we're going to talk a little bit about Scrum. Can we use what worked in a Japanese car production with Japanese culture and have the same success in software development? No, I don't think so. This is another one of the things that it makes managers super, like, it makes them feel like they have a handle on what's going on. But honestly, the managers should be given more of a role than just ticking boxes and seeing burn down charts, which is, how many tasks people are doing versus how many need to be done. A burn down chart. Okay, let's talk about Scrum is bad. Let's get a rant here. Now, I'm not going to he actually does redeem himself in this second one, but this first one, the Scrum is bad. I agreed with everything here, and some companies take it to the extreme. I've had a mild dose of this, and I thought it was just kind of pointless and silly. But other people I know have had more hardcore doses of this. Let's go.
Scrum is bad. Terrible. Throw it away. It's ridiculous. Developers become part of a mindless micro conveyor belt. It becomes about ticking cards.
Cards where an individual task that needs to be done for code for an individual item in the they call them cards.
It's a fertile ground for micromanagers to make sure that every card is ticked. The product owner is not even acquainted with coding most of the time. He's done a course. The Scrum Master is, who knows what kind of role they've been in before. Maybe some business analytical role. What's he got to do with software development? Often.
So they get a certification. These Scrum Masters will get a certification, and to go into these companies like, I'm Scrum certified. I can run all your meetings. And they're usually kind of a cheerleader, go rah type. It's so interesting. And they don't have any responsibilities other than keeping people in line. It's so childish. For manufacturing process in Japan and maybe the United States, because the way that you can adjust the rules, it makes total sense. And there are aspects of Scrum I like having the stand-up thing for 2 or 3 minutes and then just making sure everyone is technically good, and then getting into the weeds after and having a separate meeting for that is also a pretty good idea. But like all the rest of it's kind of like a burn down chart. We got a burn down chart.
A role they've been in before. Maybe some business analytical role. What's he got to do with software development? Often you find they don't have the right skills to control a software project. And Scrum is not about management in that sense. It's about not managing. It's like if you've got cards and you can look at what's ticked and what's in progress and burn down charts and all these other things and have a retrospective at the end, you don't have to manage during the day. You can go do something else. And isn't
that convenient? That's awful convenient for managers, right?
Isn't it saddening that The ones that do not have to be accountable, the Scrum Master and the product owner, well, they don't have to fill in anything. They don't have to have the burn down charts for their stuff. No, of course.
Right, there's no burn down charts for them.
It's not. It's the developers, and the developers need to be herded. The developers need to be herded into a conveyor belt, and sort of there they are, and they need to be, they don't know how to communicate. Of course not. How do they know how to have meetings or talk or do anything constructive? And they don't understand our business, do they? They're developers, right? So we've got to herd them together, control every aspect of it. Well, what happens is design goes out the window.
Yeah, completely out the window. So any of the good feedback you get from people, most developers who go into this stuff are curious people. We kind of want to know about how everything works. And if you don't, I don't know why are you in this business? Like, really, I had a question for that. But we're curious. We have lots of ideas. We've seen things. We can put some things together. We can have suggestions. And when you do this card ticking burn down chart baloney, all that stuff, all that value gone. Now we're just a code monkey. Now we're just typing in, basically coding by card. Okay. Yeah, horrible. If you're ever in a job like this, get the experience you need if you have to do it, and leave, because it just doesn't end.
Everything becomes about refactoring. We'll do it later. We'll refactor it later. We'll refactor. And if it becomes too hard to refactor, it goes on the backlog, and then there it sits, right? So it becomes less about Scrum.
So the refactoring he's talking about is this thing. He's just talking about rewriting sections of code. Where were we here? We were in the high level languages. Here it is. So doing this whole sequence of going from this naive way to this way where it doesn't actually change the output, that's called refactoring. That's what he's talking about there. That's it. That's what he's talking about. Okay, we need to close this one. Yeah, we need to go over here.
Scrum is less about Agile, I should say. Scrum isn't Agile. It has nothing in common with the Agile manifesto whatsoever. And as developers, you lose the...
And it's usually used in combination with the Agile for some reason. I think it was like a leftover when Agile was coming in. The Scrum stuff was like, we could modify the Scrum stuff. And then we'll get into it. But all of a sudden, when the Agile thing kind of blew up and everyone's like, oh my God, this is amazing. Get rid of management. All of a sudden, all the certification business came online. The Agile TM, Agile Registered Trademark Certification, Scrum Master, blah, 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 all that stuff started coming online. And they sold it really super hard to all these businesses as ways to solve their development problems, because they were getting stuck on this stuff because they kept trying to use the manufacturing. And so they saw this one. It's like, oh, this isn't really manufacturing, but it kind of is. It's not really, but it kind of is underneath, because we're gonna make it on the surface like, oh, your developers will think it's Agile, but underneath it's the same old. We're gonna make sure we're micromanaging every little tiny thing, and in that process they throw away a tremendous value for that little a bit of everything's gonna be okay. You'll know exactly when it's done. The risk is off. Don't worry. You'll know exactly when it's done. From that to having a little, 2%, really, it's like a false sense of security. All this birthed out chart, all this stuff, false sense of security. So for them to have that little whoopee blanket, they give away like all this value, which is so sad. But anyway, let's keep going.
Scrum isn't Agile. It has nothing in common with the Agile manifesto whatsoever. And as developers, you lose the will to code, to think. You don't want to be part of anything. You're just going to tick a card. And at the end of a repetitive...
This is where people get burnt out.
...iteration, you're sequestered by, well, the Holy Father for confessions. And you have to give them the...
Scrum Master. The Holy Father.
At the end of a repetitive iteration, you're sequestered by, well, the Holy Father for confessions. And you have to give them the ammunition to use against you in the next iteration again.
Yeah, why aren't you done? You said it was going to take 6 units, and you took 17 units or 12 units. Why is this not done yet? You said it was 4, but you're taking 7. You have to confess why. Your estimate is wrong. Oh, and that doesn't lead to padding of estimates, does it? No. Playing estimates games, time estimates, no. A developer would never do that.
Oh, sorry, I didn't manage to finish the card because. And then they throw that back at you again in the next iteration. None of it is real. It's just process. Every card becomes the goal, right? The process becomes the target. Developers just lose.
Right. You're now in the process of doing these cards instead of trying to deliver software value to your customers in the best and most efficient, fastest way possible that could be changed and modified and easy on you and easy on it makes them happy. That now we're taking cards and dealing with estimate points and all this abstractions that actually don't mean anything, verified by many studies. And you can look into it.
Creativity. I mean, your whole being just crumbles. I mean, all you do is follow a card, follow a card. That's what you have to do. Design is out the window. You can't sit back and say, I'm going to have a week or so to design something, and I'm going to implement it, and I'm going to get people to look at it from an API standpoint and see if they can use it properly. And then I'm going to reiterate that and then come up with something good. And if it didn't take 5 days and it took 7, so what? Right? If it took 10 days, so what? Are you building quality? Do you want something to go out well? Do you want something good out there that actually works? Or do you want to do a piecemeal, small one-day little thing and another one-day little thing? We'll just add to it and add to it, no design, just having a torchlight in a dark room. And we're just
Yeah, and I've worked on those projects that have gone through that process. Where anybody's like using and accessing any little piece and just like coming through and doing their part and leaving it. So bad. It's so bad for the code base. It's so bad for the developers. It's bad experience and eventually grinds to a halt.
A little thing and another one-day little thing. We'll just add to it and add to it, no design. Just having a torchlight in a dark room. And we're just going to follow and see where we go. And this is what people are doing. And refactoring becomes an excuse. Refactoring was, the spirit of taking something that was done incorrectly and modifying it to something else, without rewriting or reworking the code. And refactoring is something decent. It's something, something that we should be doing. And
without we change the behavior.
And can be improving our code all the time. But it's not an excuse. It's not, I'm going to do it badly so that I can do it well later. And then when...
Correct. This is a fallacy. Move fast, break things. No, unless we're just doing a learning experience and we know we're going to throw this away as a prototype. Now, I have never had a business say, okay, this is the way to do it. I've done it in my business for sure. And I made a lot of success with it because I was iterated quickly. I wasn't trying to build something many people didn't want. I built little things and then people told me what they wanted. I never built that. So it was an egoless thing.
Improving our code all the time, but it's not an excuse. It's not, I'm going to do it badly so that I can do it well later. And then...
Right. Yeah. So you can't do that. That's a bad approach. That's a sloppy approach. It will eventually cause you lots of problems and cause you heartaches and burnout if you take this approach. So you have to try to do it as well and good as you possibly can in the time allotted, right? And then, in the time you need, in the time that's given for the project at hand. And then you keep going and iterate on it. And it's like, do we want to keep going or not? We don't know how long it's going to take to get this solution. That's the problem with all this stuff. We don't know, and we can't know until we get it. And that's the risk, and that's the reward as well, because you're you're basically mining in these veins of knowledge and conceptualizations that help people out, right? And sometimes you hit a vein, and boom, you got something that really does fit the solution that fits the problem so well. And you're making somebody's day and you're making money. There you go.
When later comes, I'll do it later, and just keep moving the target. And a lot of costs come into that. Every time you refactor, it's redoing something you could have done. I've been in environments where I can see the end goal 3 months from now. And if we only sat back and took 2 weeks now, we could have solved all those problems. But instead, for 3 months, people are refactoring in order to get to that goal. And 3 months takes 6 months. You still don't have that feature. You still don't have that thing that you could have done in the beginning.
And that's a lot of stuff that the design in the beginning, like no one even paid attention to design or didn't realize that we need to scrap this and start over and put that as a part of the plan. That we're not going to try and build the whole thing at once. We're going to build a piece. If it works, great, throw it away. Build a piece, build another thing, throw it away. And then usually by the third one, you got a pretty good landscape. And by that time, you're already on schedule still, like from where you were before, except you're throwing stuff away along the way. This is so antithetical, and it's like we can throw software away. Most software that's been written, thrown away. Yes, we can throw it away. It's okay to throw software away. It really, really is.
Right. And then it's all about balance, right? So they use things like over-design as somehow an excuse. That's the reason why we don't.
No, you don't do that either.
Design it overall.
So how do you get the middle? Ooh, that is something you got to come through experience, right? You got to screw up. Try to do it the wrong way a few times. And then you're like, oh, okay, this is hard. There's no guarantees anyway. And then it's going to be, you're going to have to work for it. Yeah, it's going to not just sit back and collect easy money. But if you hit and you get it and you're paying attention, wow.
Is because some dude somewhere with beards and hats, over-design something occasionally, right? That's not how it should work, right? Design is design. It's there for a reason, right? You design something well, you implement it well, and you've got a good product. If you make bad decisions, or you don't make any design decisions, you just let it organically grow with different developers grabbing cards willy-nilly and just doing it whenever they want, you're not going to get that design.
Yeah, right. So I've mostly worked on teams like that. And it's super frustrating and really hard. But then you just like at those companies just go like, okay, I guess this is how we're doing it. And you just buckle in and try and make the best of it and make little improvements here and there, but just realize that road is gonna lead to burnout and you're gonna have to make a decision at some point.
Agile is supposed to be malleable. It's supposed to be something that is changeable. And how opposite is Scrum? It's the most unmodifiable thing I've ever encountered. We are all heathens, right? How dare you challenge Scrum? Repent. I mean, it's a religion that's formed around us. And really, it's the worst thing I've ever become part of. I can feel my intellect just swirling out my ears every time I'm in a room of Scrum people. It's just all about the process, and it's got nothing to do with creativity or quality or good of anything else.
It does. There is a type of person that likes the structure and all that stuff, but it's also, they're not really, pushing the envelope too much. You know what I mean?
So I've written down just the
And maybe just like to collect the salary and look like they're really busy and not really doing much. There's people, I mean, most people, it's a job for them. It's a job for them. I get it. I understand.
top things that I think are the worst about Scrum. So I'll just read them off. So good design is marginalized. I mean, that's absolutely true. You'll find that design just takes a back seat every single time. Everything that is not done correctly is regarded as, we'll refactor that later. And that's what it becomes, a refactoring excuse. And if it can't be refactored or it's too complicated, too solid, too architectural, well, then suddenly becomes something part of the backlog, and we'll deal with that at some other time.
Oof.
It assumes developers need herding into a production line. It facilitates micromanagement. It allows management not to manage, but look at charts and pretend they're managing. It reduces the team's ability to innovate and design things themselves and actually work for themselves and be able to do stuff. So you're taking away their responsibility and in a way, their accountability, and instead replacing it with cards and ticking, right? Developers are made somehow more accountable, but by numbers that don't mean anything. Like how many...
Yeah. These numbers, these estimates and stuff. When I first encountered this and they were doing estimates, I'm like, yeah, but the first time I've seen this thing. I don't know how the things all the systems put together. I was new to the team. Oh, so we'll show you. It's like, okay, but and it was still like, what are we doing? What is all this stuff? And that after a while, I just like kind of like threw my hands up and I'm like, okay, I'll just take the ticket and try and work through it. Okay, that's what we're doing. And the people had already left. They didn't leave a lot of documentation. Nobody really knew. It was, I guess, it's just very common. It's so common. It's very common to have these situations like this.
Right? Developers are made somehow more accountable, but by numbers that don't mean anything. Like how many cards have you done? Have you finished these cards? Like how many outstanding? I mean, it's these things don't matter. A card doesn't express the complexity.
But to managers, it does, right? For the managers and the managers of the managers and the managers of the managers of the managers, it matters to those guys because they don't know how to do this stuff, or they do, and they're just overwhelmed with complexity of people that are just trying to make it through the day.
And it's also normalizing developers. Our whole team is normalized to the common denominator. Like just because a couple of bad developers need whipping and keeping in line, perhaps now the whole team's going to suffer for that, right? So you're dumbing down the entire team. And lastly, it's completely...
Yeah, instead of bringing those ones up, you're just going to the lowest common denominator. And if you're having a high turnover at a company, one of these big corporations, whatever, I mean, I get it. You want to try and handle it somehow. It's just counterproductive as hell.
hypocritical. It's against the Agile Manifesto, it's against common sense, and it's often against the positive outcomes for your business. It's the worst thing you can adopt. And I'll end with this. I wrote it down just to get the wording correct. Don't despair. If you've been implementing a form of Scrum and it's working for you, think how good you'll be without it.
That's true. So he has a follow-up. I am not going to go to his follow-up. Let me go back to where I was before. We were at software design, some common thoughts on the software design. Oh, my internet's slow. Okay, come on. I shouldn't have changed the page. All right, let's go back over here. So Agile architecture. Yes. Okay. So here's the Scrum's bad, blah, blah, blah. Oh yeah, James Copeland on what Agile really means. Okay, let's look at that one. Hopefully my internet will be working.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Alan Holub, and what is on the agenda, actually today and tomorrow, because this is the first of a two-part class, is we're going to talk a little bit about Agile architecture. Just by way of introduction is that a lot of the work that I do nowadays centers around what I think of as Agile infusion work, which is to say coming into an organization and helping them move in the direction of using Agile processes.
He fixes audio.
That, at least the way I do it, turns out to be a mixture of education and consulting and architecture and hands-on work. I started out doing it coming from the perspective of software architecture, just trying to help Agile communities be able to put together things in a way that worked. Is that one of the things that people don't understand about Agile is that architecture is a really significant component of getting Agile systems to function. Is that more often than not, when people think about Agile, one of the things that they think is that there isn't any architecture, that there isn't any design, and that everything is done in an ad hoc way at the last minute, and that's actually far from true.
Okay, so this guy, Alan Holub, he's kind of controversial. Just saying, if you bring him up, people are gonna get mad. But he brings up really excellent points, and I have worked at companies that are like what he's talking about, and it's amazing. It's super great, but you have to have really high quality people, and the management all has to be on board with what this guy's talking, what the approach is here. You will get amazing results, but it means the managers have to let go of the reins, and they hate that. And most companies, they cannot do that. It cannot be done. But the companies that understand this stuff and want to make something different and want to see it, succeed with intelligent people who are resourceful or clever, this is how you do it.
Is that the problem is not that there's no design. The problem is that the design has to be one that can accommodate the kinds of constant change that are implicit in an Agile process. And mostly what I'll be talking about then today and tomorrow is the sorts of things that one has to do in one's code in order to be able to accommodate that kind of process. So by way of introduction.
So he's talking about writing your code in such a way, and we'll get into this in the later parts of this course, in such a way that it is modifiable and extensible and makes sense to people. If a new person comes on a team, they can make sense of it. A lot of this has to do with the domain-driven design stuff. Your program inside is going to use the same words as everyone else in the company, or the business, or wherever you're working for. You're using the same words, that kind of stuff. So when you look at the code and you hear people talking, it's like, oh, they're talking about this. This is what they're talking about. There's this problem here. It's like, oh, I can read it. It's like a story. I can read the code. He's talking about writing things in a way and so it gets flexible to change, right? And man, it is a skill and to do this properly, because it's so easy to make it so it's hard. Code is fragile. It's hard to change. You can't modify it very easily. That's what we're trying to get to with the Agile process, is to get the code so we can swap it out and change it easily. Or just the attitude of we'll throw it away, right? We'll just throw it away and learn and use this team's knowledge. That's why it's important to keep this team going and make them happy and not burn them out, because you're going to use that knowledge to build the next thing.
Before I even start into the slides themselves, let me spend just a moment to talk about what Agile is, just so that we can all be on the same page. When Agile is, get my thoughts in order here. Agile is really a completely different way of looking at software development than what most companies do. And I should say, by the way, that unfortunately, my guess is that even those of you that are in here who are working for companies that are claiming to do Agile are probably not doing Agile. Is that if you're doing any kind of estimation based on time, you are not doing Agile.
So that right there is the line that's going to piss off anybody that comes in contact with his material. Because his whole thing is about these estimates have to go. These estimates are meaningless. It causes unnecessary problems. It cuts off the creativity aspect, because we're now asking people to figure out how long things are taking, and we're going to beat them up about it because we don't know how long it's going to take. Yeah. So his whole thing is like, okay, we need to get away from this estimates thing and get more of like, okay, we're going to go a month or 2 months or 6 months on this project. And at the end of it, we want to keep going. You give us a thumbs up. And if you don't, we'll give us a thumbs down. And that's how it is anyway. It just makes it right to the front, right? This is an indeterminate process. We don't know how long it's going to take, but we're going to make changes along the way. And we're going to see where we can get with this team, with this knowledge set, with this tactic. We're going to see how far we can get. That's the attitude, not we're going to complete the project in estimated time or else, you bastards. You're holding out on us, you guys. It's kind of like the manager's like, you guys are holding out on us. We need to keep you in line. That's kind of how That's kind of how these companies are thinking underneath the surface. Like, these developers are all over the place.
If there are any deadlines based on time, if there are any benchmarks based on time, you are not doing Agile. Agile is fundamentally not a time-centered process. By the same token, Agile requires constant feedback and constant interaction with users, which means that an actual end user of your software must be in the room while you are developing.
Okay, that's another key element that has to be in the room, like part of the team or in constant contact, ready contact at any moment to contact a customer or the customer's representative, not the manager, not the production, whoever's else doing another role in the team. No, the actual customer who will be paying money for the thing. That guy, not a rep, an actual person. It's really important. If you can't have him in the room with you, you have to meet with him regularly with whatever you're doing, like more than once a week, maybe more. This is why companies can't do it. They don't know how to do it. I can't do it because they don't know how to do it. They don't understand this part of it. So you gotta have the customer right there. It's like, yes, you have to have the customer right there.
If you're not doing that, you're not doing Agile. So there's a lot of fake Agile in the world. Usually shops that are doing fake Agile are Scrum shops. And Agile is a complicated, interlocked set of processes, but more importantly, Agile is culture.
Yeah, it's more culture. I don't think it's the processes because it doesn't really describe processes. So these Agile TMC companies, I mean, he's on this track as well, but he takes this other way. Like that's why he's very controversial. But the thing about it is, like, most of the people who are controversial with him, they haven't experienced what I've experienced, what I've seen the results of when my company, my startup, when I did this thing, and other companies too that I had worked up before did this approach. Holy crap. The stuff they came up with was amazing, and it was so fun to work there. Talk about motivated. Those guys cranked out some code. Holy moly.
And unless the company has an Agile culture, it cannot really be Agile. It's just not going to work. So what happens in that culture is, as I said, very different than what happens in a normal culture, is that in an Agile shop, and I'll talk a little bit more about this tomorrow in the second part of this class, everything is based on what are called user stories, which are literally stories, small vignettes that describe the user in the process of doing something with the software that you're writing. And
this is one way of doing Agile, right? Of using these user stories. Like, the user would like to do this. This is just one methodology, one approach, one idea of how to do things. As you know, you want to give the user, like, he wants to log in, then he wants to check his email, and then he wants to send an email, or not unsend an email. Like, we're adding a new feature of this email program that unsends stuff, like that kind of stuff. That's a user journey, a user story.
The story then is at the center of the whole process, in the sense that what you do as a developer is develop these small stories. It takes a couple weeks usually to put a story together, to put a story into.
Right, so you're doing a little workflow, and you're just doing the bare minimum of that thing, just to get it out there. It's like, could you mean like this? And then people go, no, we didn't mean that, because if you don't know what they want until you show it to them, that's just human nature.
Practice. At which point you actually release it to your users. You'll get feedback from your users, ideally, immediately or close to it. And then you incorporate that feedback into the product immediately.
Right. So you can't plan super hardcore out in advance, but you're going to still have a plan. You're going to still have a direction. You're still going to have things you're going to want to do from the original, the not the big design up front, but the somewhat design up front. And then you're going to start just shipping stuff and doing the best you can. You look at, like, hey, do you mean this? Do you mean that? Do you mean this? Is this what you kind of had in mind? And they go like, no, that's not it at all. Or that's it. Yeah, that's it. Or, oh, no, you need to put this over here and that. That's the process. And you get right to what they want because they're involved the whole time.
Which is to say, the next release, 2 weeks later, is going to immediately incorporate.
2 weeks is not necessary. You don't have to do 2 weeks. It could be 10 days. It could be 7 days. You don't have to have you don't even have to have a cadence. You can just, like, when it's done, here you go. The whole cadence thing is totally arbitrary.
User feedback. It's going to change the product. And the user is in charge here. It will literally change the product. Which means that often when you're in the Agile world, you don't know what you're developing.
The user is not in charge. The developers are still in charge, but you're getting feedback from the users. The users are giving you rapid feedback. And the developers, because we want to deliver something good, we are going to take it in, look at it. Does it fit in with everything else? Is it correlating with other people, other users? Are they all asking the same thing? Is there this one, like, about a unique idea? It's like, oh, we didn't see this. This is amazing over here. Or is this a spin-off something? All that stuff gets all thrown in when you're doing it this way. Instead of having proxies and we know what the customer wants, they keep telling us. Okay, but are you telling the developers? Because the developers need to hear it because they're the ones that are seeing all this stuff put together, how this is all put together. They're the ones they're living in it.
In advance. You think you know what you're developing, but until you get that user feedback, you don't know whether you're developing the right thing. Is that Eric Rice, who wrote a really interesting and I think valuable book called The Lean Startup, says it, I think, really well. He says, if you are developing the wrong product, the fact that you're doing it on time within budget is completely irrelevant.
Right, and that's the problem. That's the problem with the Scrum stuff and all this stuff is like, yes, we can get it done on time, but it's not going to be what you want. By the time we do it, or if it's going to be something substantial, by the time it comes out, if you're not getting the users involved early on this whole process, it's not going to be what you want. And somebody else that is doing this process is going to come along and just make your stuff irrelevant. And that happens a lot.
If you develop an on-time, in-budget product that nobody is ever going to use, you have accomplished nothing.
You've just tanked the company.
Nonetheless, in most shops, the focus is all on that on-time, in-budget stuff. In Agile, we're not talking about that. We're talking about trying to develop a product that people actually want to use, something that's valuable to actual human beings, which is not something that's invented by a marketing department. It's not something invented by you, necessarily. Often the way that users use products is surprising. I was just talking to a friend at breakfast this morning, and we were talking about use cases surrounding the iPad. And I was up in Windsor a couple days ago, and I passed at least half a dozen.
It's just still the same thing. I am shocked and appalled at some of the things people have done with the software that I've worked on. Like, are you kidding? You did that with it?
Dozen people that were taking photographs with their iPad. Now, who would ever have thought that? I wouldn't, right? That the camera would be an important part of a tablet, right? Because you don't think of a tablet's use cases as involving cameras. So the point is that unless you interact with the users, you're probably not going to be able to predict things like that. If the iPad, by some strange chance, turned into one of the major vehicles that people use for taking videos, that would completely change the way that the product would work.
I mean, people do that. That's the thing.
It would completely change the way that the software would work. And unless you get that user feedback, you don't know that. So everything in Agile then is based on getting feedback from the actual users of your product.
That's Agile. Getting feedback from the actual users of your product. And let me get back to that page. Where are we at again? We're class-oriented program, software design, some software. What's going on here? Come on. Give me, there it is. Okay, here we are. Agile. Okay, let's go talk to Kevlin Henney. He's really, really awesome on this as well. And you should go listen to these guys talk and realize these are really controversial thinking because you're asking managers to give up their power. And they don't like doing that, man. And unless you can show them, it's like, hey, we're leaving all this stuff on the table. There's all this great information, and with that, unless you have to let go and get credit. How about let go, get credit? Somehow give the managers credit on all this stuff. They let you do the Agile stuff this way. You have to. Well, they have to be bought in anyway, so they're going to be bought in. So you have to kind of find an organization after you do the time in the trenches to find organizations that are like this. They're rare. They're small. They're rare, and they also need you to be talented and not talented. You need to be a little experienced and know what you're doing. And the only way to do that is to get into places where it's a little harder than you think it should be. And then you can graduate up to where I'm done with that crap. Let's just try and make the program as good as possible. Let's make the best software possible. And then you can be responsible enough to do the Agile. Because it's not for everyone.
Right, okay. This is the session where you get to sleep off the carbohydrates. They put me after lunch. Right, so we're going to get some pace here. I'm hoping to have time for some questions. If I don't manage that because of my amazing timekeeping skills, we will slam straight into the break and you'll have to ask me in person, okay? Which I'm more than happy to do. So what are we here to talk about? I guess Agile. So I want to talk about the case for technical excellence. This is a phrase that pops up in the Agile Manifesto, but it's quite well hidden.
By the way, I should give you the Agile Manifesto real quick. It's right here. Woo! It's such a huge document. Whoa! The 4 values. It's just values. This is it. This is the. Anybody talks about the patterns and the procedures? No, there's no patterns. There's none of that stuff. And it becomes real obvious why there's none of that stuff. Anyone that's really doing Agile, they should know these 4. And if they don't, it's like, what are you guys doing? Okay, individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Working software over comprehensive documentation. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Responding to change over following a plan. While we value the items on the right, we value the items on the left more. Not saying these aren't important. These are very important. But these are more important in many ways. These can crush all this stuff. These can make all this stuff not even a thing, right? If we're going through a product and we respond to change that makes our stuff radically better than the other guy that's not going through and doing these processes, yes, that makes our company survives. Our company does better. We win. We get time off to do our thing, money, fame, all that stuff. But if we're just dumbly, like blindly following a plan, yeah, we don't get any of this stuff. We don't get those benefits of what software knowledge work is really about. We don't get any of that stuff. You're just cutting all that stuff off. So yeah, so it's responding to change. Let's get into it.
And it is something that is often overlooked. There are plenty of companies doing agile adoptions, and we see a lot of focus on organizational structure, and sometimes things get lost in budgets, things get lost in translation. But I'm here to highlight one very important and obvious statement that a software system is made of software. Nothing matters unless that you end up with some software. All the rest is just talk, okay? And that talk is there to support us in something. And when we talk about architecture, architecture is a structure. It is a place in which we live and work, literally and figuratively. But if all we're doing is talking about it, then it's not a thing. Talking about a house is not the same as actually living in a house, okay?
Yeah, and there's a lot of people who are architects that are just talking about this stuff. Unless you're out and writing code, you're not really an architect. Sorry. I hope I ruffle some feathers out there, but if you're not actually writing code and mentoring people to write the code that you're designing, you're not an architect. You're just blowing hot air. Stop. Go back. Do some coding.
Okay? These are different. So unless the thing is actually there, it's not agile. If you're not producing software, it's not architecture unless you're producing software. So what does this have to do with this? Well, it's to do with the qualities that we care about. So my name's Kevlin Henney. We live in an age of social media fragmentation. I used to just introduce myself with my Twitter handle, but these days I've just given up and I now have a shopping list of all of the places you can find me. Normally look for Kevlin or Kevlin Henney and you will strike gold or
I'll let him do his promotion.
bronze, depending
He's
on
a good guy.
what I'm about to say.
Very good
So yeah, I'm generally findable. I'm more than happy to be found.
And very controversial as well.
So let's talk about this. Best definition of Agile? I quite like dictionaries. In fact, I like dictionaries very much. They are the only piece of software that I actually install from CD-ROMs. I have physical dictionaries in books along my bookshelves, and I have CD-ROMs, and it's the only thing I install on a new laptop, which normally sees me running around the house looking for the one optical drive in the house that is collecting dust in some room. But I am fascinated by this stuff and the origin of words and their meaning. Able to move quickly and easily.
Able to move quickly and easily. Agile is a verb. Or an adjective as well. It means to be able to move around. It's not a noun. It's not a noun. People call it a noun. They keep it agile, TM, blah, blah, blah. It's like brown. I'm brown. I'm heavy. I'm very heavy. Yes, I'm the heavy. Are you doing the heavy process?
Honestly, everything else is just secondary. But there are two ideas here. Quickly and easily. And in fact, there's a third idea. Adjective is a description of a property. That's the whole point. It's an adjective. It describes something you can observe. I can observe something and say, you know what? That team is more agile.
So this is why architecture is important. How you build your program, how you build your software, how you think about things, all this domain-driven design stuff. If you have it in your mind ahead of time, like don't try to optimize for it, but like make it so things can be changeable, not in stone. Maybe the first version, yeah, hard code everything. The first version, throw that puppy away. Take all the learnings, design it better. And spend some time on that one. And maybe throw that one away after a month or two. Throw it away. Get another one going. That third one's going to be righteous.
Agile than they were last year. That team's more agile than that team. It's an observation you can make. Okay, it's not a thing that you do. Unless you are many organizations, in which case you rather simplify it. You make it a noun. Apparently it's something you do. It's not something that you are. And also, honestly, two ideas. That's way too complex. We're just going to do things quickly.
No, that's a bad idea. Yeah, that's where the manager's like, you could say quickly? Did you say we could do it quicker? By doing this, we get it quicker? And they thought it meant, oh, we do the estimates and all that stuff, and it'll make it come faster. The plan. No. We're going to take as much time, maybe more, but we're going to produce something the customer wants, right? So we'll both get to the same time zone, or get to the same end time at the same place. And one is something that we kind of mostly like or somewhat like or getting in the range of liking versus what is this piece of shit? I didn't ask for that.
Easily? Not a thing. In fact, we end up with this problem. That actually what we end up with, without paying attention to this, is busyness. People are micromanaged and frantic, and instead of having...
Right. So it has the illusion of progress. Another lovely thing that managers love to say. They say, oh, look, it's moving along. Look, my chart is going down by 6%. Maybe we can do 7% next week. Can we get 7% of the estimates done?
A deadline once a quarter or once a year. They have a deadline every week or multiple times a day. This is exhausting. That's the way they perceive it. We've definitely taken a wrong turn.
Squeeze those developers. They're holding out on us.
In many organizations and how this has been understood. But there's another thing that goes on. This one. I don't think anybody ever actually puts this forward as a value, prioritizing business goals over technical excellence. But if you observe and listen to what people are actually saying, this happens an awful lot.
Exactly. We got a budget. We got till the end of December. What can we ship by then? You lay out everything you're going to do. We'll add up all the hours. Go.
People are often saying, well, there's technical work needs to be done. Yeah, but we've been told to do feature work. We've been told to prioritize business goals. What actually happens in this case? Well, what you do, cleverly, is it's one of those things, you undermine the very goals that you aim for.
Right, exactly. That's the problem, right? By aiming for the business goals, we completely destroy the technical, which means your product isn't going to give your customers the stuff they want. You'll be on time, you'll be on budget, but your customers aren't going to buy it because it's going to suck.
This is a thing known as the backfire effect. The backfire effect is when you are trying to do one thing and you focus on it so much in a particular way that actually you undermine it, and the reverse happens. We've actually seen this we see this in a number of cases in the real world. Some of the best examples we can find in places like Australia, where a non-native species is introduced, and the local wildlife collapses as a result of changes in the ecosystem. So then what you do is you introduce a natural predator, and now you have a new problem. It does kind of get rid of the original animal, but actually you've created a new ecosystem in which they are now beautifully in resonance. And you now have a worse problem than when you started with. Okay, we've got rabbits, let's introduce foxes. Oh, now we've got foxes and rabbits. Oh, shit, to use a technical term. This happens all the time. Oh, no, we can't prioritize technical work. Why? Because we are going to prioritize business work. Oh, brilliant. So what you do is you manage to screw up both every single time. And now, if you have a contradiction to that...
so you end up screwing up both, right? So that's the problem, is you mess up both. When you can just mess up one. Okay, the company, we ran out of money, we didn't hit the goal, we didn't mine it, we didn't listen to our customers, we gave them completely something wrong, or we were only like 50% of the way, and we need to be 62% of the way to get the money for the next round. Okay, but that usually doesn't happen. What usually happens is like, oh shit, we're on the target now. We're getting down. And then the people are seeing the production, and the customers are like, this is amazing. And they'll go, okay, we'll go a little further. We'll figure out another way to get the money somehow. Because the issue is finding the customer's need and delivering it in a way that makes it happy. That's the hard part. Once you get that done, the money comes in, no problem. Jeez, I'm croakers.
Hear about it, but let's talk about how this actually plays out. So hopefully people are familiar with this. The main thing that I want to point out is that we can always ask the question, what is it that something that is over 2 decades old, put together by 17 middle-aged white guys, is that still relevant in 2023? That's one way of looking at it. The other thing is, are there any statements there you disagree with? Have we suddenly decided to contradict anything there? No, I don't think so. I mean, there's other things we could add. There's nothing I'm going to remove. It's actually a nice piece of English as well. But the bit that people miss, apart from actually what this means, is the bit below the fold. The 12 principles, and there's no ambiguity here. One of the key ideas, continuous attention to technical excellence and good design enhances agility. Right.
We've been talking about that the whole time. Paying attention to this stuff. Trying our best. Doing our best. But in small slices, right? Little pieces. Is this our best? Is this our best? Oh no, that's not our best. Oh, this is better. Oh, let's do it this way then.
I do kind of wish this had somehow made it onto the first page, because I get a lot of people saying, oh yeah, our company's doing this Agile adoption. We've all been sent on Scrum certification courses or stuff like that. And, suddenly our architecture sucks. And the quality of...
Oh, now it sucks. The Scrum. Oh, you got the Scrum. You got to do all the things. Oh, yeah. We got the Scrums. We got the burn down charts. We got the cards. And we got the Scrum Master. We got everything, all the positions. They're telling everybody what to do, when to do it. We got the ceremonies and the stand-ups and the burn down turns. And the retrospectives, and everyone's producing everything. All the documents are being.
Code base is
Are you saying the architecture sucks now? No, you don't say.
education courses or stuff like that. And suddenly our architecture sucks, and the quality of the code base has just dropped through the floor because we're doing Agile. And it's just like, well, okay, yeah, that's the problem. You're doing Agile, and that's not a thing you can.
We're doing Agile. We're doing brown. We're doing heavy. These people
do. But there's something else here. They said, yeah, but there's nothing about technical quality. There's nothing about technical work.
One question you can ask the company if you can check to see if you're doing Agile, and you have to be careful because it's going to make you sound like you're smart ass when you ask this question. It's like, how much time in the budget do you have to change the plan, to change whatever the plan is based on customer feedback every sprint? And if they look at you like you got 3 heads, you know what kind of organization you're in. And the other would be like, yeah, of course, we change it all the time. We don't change it. We're changing it now. We had this conversation we just had where we're going to change it based on what you were talking about. It was some good ideas.
And the code, there is. And it's actually relatively unambiguous. If you want this stuff to go well.
They look at you like you have 3 years, like, what did you just say? We changed nothing. We have cards to make. We have to get them done. These cards have been estimated months ago.
Then actually good design, because agility is an observation. Can I move the code base quickly and easily? If the answer is yes, well done, you're Agile. If the answer is no, you've still got work to do. Yeah. And that is an important thing that I think that sometimes people need to kind of speak up on this one. Because it is an adjective. You describe everything about the way that you're working. The small practices, the large practices, but also the thing that you're working on, the software. All of this is for nothing unless you have software.
Right, this has to come from buy-in from top. Like, you can't come into an organization and expect them to influence them in this way. It doesn't work like that.
Is that Agile? Does that reflect the nature of the organization and how it works? If the answer is yes, well done. You have something to talk about. If it's improving, that's great. If somehow you are trying to do the impossible and become Agile without any technical excellence, you're going to find you have a far harder proposition. You're going to run into exactly the same brick walls that people have been running into for decades.
So I'm going to let you listen to the rest of that video. Really great information. Definitely get your head on straight about what it's like to work in these environments. Okay, where do we go here? So safe is the same thing. Same crazy plan, trying to put more structure on top of the Scrum Agile TM's copyright, registered trademark certification. It's just more bad stuff. It's just more of that thing trying to make managers feel, don't worry, we know exactly how long it's going to take. We know how we can budget this. We can put a budget together for this. You can budget Agile. We're going to pay for this project for 6 months. You guys got 6 months, and we're going to let you figure it out. And we're going to put the customer in the room for it with you, or have a beeline right to his desk or Zoom call once a month, once a week, or anytime you need him. We're paying this guy to deal with you. That's what it takes from the top. Okay, we trust you, but after that 6 months, if you're not anywhere close, guess what? You're out of here, and that's how it is anyway. That's the thing too. It's like I argue with you. It's like, this is how it is anyway. If you don't make a product that there's no guarantee you're gonna have a job or that company's gonna be there with that attitude. No. All right. So the problem is applying the production management methodologies to software development knowledge work, and the main issues are these approaches. They all assume the software development is just another manufacturing process, and that people doing the work are just another kind of resource that's interswappable. And can be managed like a replaceable manufacturing worker. Though all these people contain lots of knowledge from doing these processes. Like, they will gain lots of knowledge, and it's important to keep them around if you want to extract that value and get your customers to love your stuff, man. That's what it's about. We're taking other people's lunch. That's what we're doing. Come on. So the fundamental idea of Agile is responding to change. Like, how can we make software development more flexible and fast, and respond to change and refinements as the requirements change, as we figure out what we're trying to make for people? And so there's cumbersome process. This whole safe thing is, to monitor the charts and graphs, a standard way for business. This is like a standard way okay, it makes sense, right? These managers are coming usually from manufacturing processes, right? Or that's the business school is what they're telling people. Business school doesn't have a category for software yet. I'm surprised it hasn't. We've been doing this since the 60s, and we don't. We don't. That's why we're having these problems and issues, because knowledge work is fundamentally different. We're not working in a factory. We're making a factory, and we're making a factory for what? We don't know yet. That's what we're working on. We're trying to figure out what kind of factory to make. Because once we have one that we want to make and the customers want it, we could build a 10 billion of them in 2 seconds. Because that's how software is. And that's why we were into this stuff, because you can do those kinds of things. So Agile was a response to the progression towards more and more cumbersome processes that were driving progress to a standstill. So these projects were dying with these old production tools, and people were getting angry, upset. Lots of people burning out. Lots of people left during this process, these periods, because it was just unbearable to work in these conditions. It's like sweatshop level stuff. So the key finding of the Agile Manifesto is like humans rarely know what they want until they experience what they don't want. And the solution is work iteratively with feedback often and integrate that feedback to make sure we're building the best known solution at the time. That's the whole point. That's what we're doing. It's not about having a career. It's not about, job security. You will, if you do it this way, you'll have job security. Don't worry about it. But like that, if you're just trying to follow a process to make it a budget on time, you're going to be on death marches. It's good to do at least one of those to understand there should be a different way, a better way of doing it. And then that's when this stuff becomes like clear. It's like, oh, that's what he's talking about. I'm Chris. Give me a like and subscribe. I'll talk to you soon.